Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting the Joint Subcommittee on General Government to order. Secretary, could you please call roll? And Assemblyman Levitt is having some camera issues, but I think his audio is working.
Assemblywoman Gorlow. Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Senator Dennis.
Here.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Chair Brooks.
Here. All right. We're all here. I remind the members to mute themselves when you are not talking, and also put down in the chat if you recognize to ask a question or make a comment to the presenter. And I also would like to remind the public who's joining us today that on our agenda, there are many ways to make public comment. Do it online, you can submit written comment, you can call in at the end. Last agenda item will be public comment. To the Nevada Legislature's website and go to the Nellis tab of the Nevada Legislature's website, and there's a banner at the top that walks you through all of those ways to participate. Public comment will be at the end. Today we have the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs budget presentation, and they have 5 budgets that we'll be looking at today. And I would like to invite Director Brenda Scolari to begin her presentation when you are ready, Director.
Thank you, Chairman Brooks, and good morning. For the record, I'm Brenda Scolari, the Director of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. I will be presenting on behalf of the tourism budget accounts. Just allow me to share my screen. Are you able to see that?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, I'll proceed then. The presentation I'm about to give you has a few additions to the one you were presented in the pre-session meeting, so I'll just quickly review it. Our mission is to make every Nevada community a better place to live and work by driving lodging tax revenue through visitation. Another big part of our support of local economies is our ability to increase visitor spending, a direct influence on local businesses and taxable income. Our marketing engagement with visitors informs them how to best enjoy the many destinations and activities throughout our state. Our grant program helps tourism partners advance their own marketing plans and amplify our efforts in domestic and international markets. Our domestic campaigns track our interaction with trip planners and refer them to our tourism partners. Our goal is to inform and engage at every step of the travel customer journey, and we measure our effectiveness to make messaging and media buying adjustments along the way. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Travel Nevada brand, which currently positions our state as the destination with the ultimate urban playgrounds, unrivaled outdoor recreation, and authentic Western culture. We are well positioned to be a destination of choice for a COVID-weary population in need of fun and exploration. During the pandemic, our Discover Your Nevada campaign encouraged residents to explore their own communities and beyond in an effort to capture travel spending in-state and boost our economy. Our website is a hub for trip planners that provides customized experience and has been highly trafficked for COVID updates related to tourism partners. We will monitor international travel sentiment for opportunities post-COVID, starting with Canada and Mexico. We engage international markets by creating itineraries and resources that include Las Vegas and Reno, but extend those long-haul stays to visit other destinations in Nevada. Our grant program is the longstanding core of our connection to tourism partners. And during the pandemic, we distributed $1.65 million in coronavirus relief dollars to tourism businesses and services, helping them produce new marketing assets to address the pandemic. This pie chart of expenditure in fiscal year 20 is a good example of our traditional spending breakdown, with the majority spent in domestic markets on marketing and public relations. Our major decision units are focused on the reduction of lodging tax revenue in FY22 and a corresponding reduction in lodging tax transfers. The other decision units are adjustments to department operating expenses. With a single funding source, our FY21 revenue is projected to be down 49%, which has resulted in transfer reductions, layoffs, pay reductions, and a focus on only the most essential programs. This is additional information not provided in the prior presentation, which calls your attention to visitor spending. Though our funding source is lodging tax, this is not our only priority in local economies. Incremental visitor spending outside of Washoe and Clark County is a major contribution to the statewide economy and totals $1.8 billion. We acknowledge our engagement with potential visitors influence and increases their spending. Our recovery challenges in the biennium, besides meeting lodging tax projections, are focused on hiring staff to better serve our tourism partners and meeting the marketing challenges of competing with other Western states for visitors. I'll now talk a bit about Nevada Magazine. We all know Nevada Magazine is a hallmark of Nevada history and education. I'd like to address some of the challenges it has been facing in the past decade. Like all print publications, the transition to digital and mobile consumption of content hasn't been an easy one. The magazine's readership has decreased as younger generations look to online content first for information and entertainment. In recent years, the publication has worked to archive its decades of publications online for use by researchers and educators. It's launched a new website and expanded the content available to digital subscribers. Since last session, the magazine leadership met with a leading US publisher, Travel Nevada, and other key stakeholders to brainstorm a new business model for the magazine. Readers and advertisers were surveyed to gain better understanding of needs and challenges. The result was a report on potential changes in the business model that could expand both the readership and the advertising base, as well as elevate the quality of the publication to attract younger print readers. Of the two beneficial business models outlined, the magazine chose the one easiest to transition to, which included reducing the number of issues for production savings, changing content to interest new readers, and developing new sectors of advertisers beyond the tourism community. The magazine is an enterprise fund, which means it is self-funded through ad and subscription sales. Unfortunately, like so many small businesses, the ability to expand into new areas, particularly in regard to advertisers, was wiped out by the pandemic. We are hopeful that the coming fiscal year will be a better economic landscape in which to have the magazine's revenue streams expand into new areas, and we'll continue to report the progress as new benchmarks are met. These are the enhancement units included in the governor's recommended budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Scolari. We do have quite a few questions, and I think I'll start. My questions are really around the revenue that drives the lodging tax revenue that kind of funds everything that you do, and it's fine. Do you have any further data on the room tax revenue trends? Is the tourism industry doing anything that you think would lead the agency to anticipate visitor volume or occupied room nights and rates to rebound?
Well, we fully expect recovery almost within 7% of FY19 funding by FY23. This is well acknowledged by the entire tourism industry domestically, that the industry is resilient. We have pent up room and travel demand. And so really our recovery and those challenges attached to that will extend into FY22. But we really anticipate being in good shape by the end of the biennium.
And we all hope. Can you just go into a little bit greater detail on how the recommended amount of decreases from the room tax revenues and transfers are going to impact the budgets, how those budgets will be? We'll get into individual budgets, but just kind of globally.
Okay. Well, our 3/8 of 1% of lodging tax is then transferred in funding splits to the other cultural agencies within my department, as well as to several budget accounts outside of the department. And so our decrease in revenue had, triggered a reduction in those transfers as well. And that does affect programs. Travel Nevada, the Division of Tourism, has really pared down to essential programs in FY21. Will be expanding into attention to drive markets and domestic markets next fiscal year, and certainly resuming our interest in international markets. But I think that's the bottom line for all of the agencies affected, is they have to reduce programs and services, unfortunately.
And you had some really tough choices to make. And can you just kind of touch on the philosophy you used on how you determined within those budgets where to make cuts and how?
Well, the pandemic really drove many of our choices in that with a global and domestic shutdown of such magnitude, we really didn't have visitors to engage. And that's why we turned to in-state marketing only. And with our Nevada residents able to travel, at least within their own communities, we wanted to encourage them to do that, give them as much information and education about what was available that they could enjoy even within the COVID limitations. And then in particular, acquaint them with our 10 branded road trips within Nevada. All of them hub out of our metro centers of Reno and Las Vegas. And we wanted to encourage them, as their comfort level increased, to entertain the idea of, visiting our amazing state parks, taking a day trip, an overnight stay, and particularly around the holidays, we did a lot of work surrounding small businesses and a Nevada gift buying guide. So we were trying to do everything we could to boost our economy and capture spending in state.
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it's a tough job. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I believe that Assemblywoman Howdiggy has a question as well on this issue.
Thank you, Chair. And I know you were touching on the revenue, and I'd like to touch a little bit on the budget reduction. So I want to jump over to Decision Unit D600. And I know the recommendations are to have a reduction over the fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 23 of about 1.8 million. But I just wanted you to walk us through what that means. So what kind of impact is that going to have on us in the long term? Because I know in your presentation that you said most of the marketing and advertising budget is on domestic, but I know there's some international marketing and advertising that's in there as well. And so if you could just walk us through what kind of long-term impacts is this going to have by reducing the marketing and advertising budget? And what kind of reductions are we going to see like on international marketing and advertising?
Well, our overall programmatic reduction of over 2.7 million will affect our engagement with international markets. However, the entire industry really doesn't see a lot of long-haul visitation in the coming fiscal year. Industry-wide, we don't anticipate our traditional international markets really returning until 2023. So that was sort of not an easy decision to make, and certainly we'll be in touch with those markets and monitoring, as I said in my presentation, the travel sentiment from those global markets. But we are unfortunately going to have to reduce our media buying ability domestically in the domestic markets we traditionally engage with. My deputy director, and she also acts as our chief marketing officer, is on the call if she wanted to weigh in on any of the details and the reductions next year.
Yeah, just just like how those reductions are going to impact tourism in the long term. And I know it was 2.7 in fiscal year 2022, but only 100,000 reductions in fiscal year 23. Is that because we're expecting more revenue coming in?
Absolutely, yes. That's that full recovery. We're only anticipating being 7% down in FY23. So all of the programmatic changes really mean we're spending less in domestic markets on marketing and PR. So that means fewer digital ads, reduced ability to create new campaigns and messaging, that sort of thing.
Okay.
However, I'm sorry. However, we do have a very strong in-house marketing team. And even though we've had a reduction in staff, those people have really redoubled their efforts to take on as much work in-house as possible.
And then sticking in the budget reductions, I know that not only are we having reductions to marketing and advertising, but also the rural marketing grants. Can you walk me through the same question? What kind of impact do we see to the rural marketing partners with a reduction to this program?
I believe we only had a reduction in the our projects related to tourism grants. That was under advisement by the governor's finance office. Those grants, it's a much smaller amount than our marketing grant awards. And those are intended to be used for infrastructure projects. But the same, our marketing grant award program is meant to bolster our tourism partners' ability to not only align and leverage our domestic marketing, but be stronger regionally with their own. So any reduction in grant awards does mean just fewer dollars that we're able to share with our tourism partners.
Okay, and if I could, Chair, just one follow-up, and it's still in budget reductions, but in staffing and office. Okay, thank you. Okay, and my last question was regarding your positions in Southern Nevada and your the space where you guys used to be housed at your current space. So you used to have 2 positions. I know one position due to the pandemic had to be laid off in June 2020. So the only position left in Southern Nevada is an IT specialist, correct? So, and I know there's a savings in the positions and also the moving of offices. You're now housed at the Nevada State Museum, but how are you as a department, how are you effectively collaborating with Las Vegas area tourism and tourism organizations if you don't have any staff in Southern Nevada and your only staff there isn't a consumer facing staff, it's just an IT specialist?
Well, I can tell you that our participation with tourism partners in Southern Nevada is very strong. Steve Hill, the CEO of the LVCVA, is one of our commissioners. We have staff engaged with our Las Vegas Territory Tourism Partner Committee, and we engage with them in every program we entertain. And certainly the savings associated with that office closure, as I was looking at every cost savings measure I could, when the pandemic first hit and we were very concerned about our financial health going into the summer, it seemed like a necessary step. But as we kind of initiate a needs assessment, as we refill positions, we will absolutely look at either hiring remote staff out of Clark County in Las Vegas, or looking at leasing more office space to again have a physical hub to work out of.
Okay, and so there is plans to possibly reopen a Las Vegas office. It's just concerning to me too. Like, I know the bulk of the tourism is probably in Southern Nevada, so to not have Southern Nevada staff and have it all here is just concerning to me. But that was it for me, Chair Brooks. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hadegay. I think that we can just walk through each of the individual budgets now, if that works for you, Director Scolari.
Okay, I will ask my finance manager, Angie Mattison. Would you, Chairman Brooks, would you prefer to just look at the enhancement decision units, or how would you like to prefer we do that?
Well, so I think we have some individual questions on each individual budget, and so I think that, including the enhancements. So we'll just start with budget 1523. The tourism development budget, and then we'll just in order of how we have them on the agenda, and then you or any of your staff can answer those questions for us if that works for you.
Okay, that works.
And I do believe on the tourism development budget, Assemblywoman Gorlow has a couple of questions.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. And yes, I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit more about the anticipated impacts of the recommended reductions to the Tourism Development Grant Program, and if reserve funds could be used to restore some of the grant money?
For the record, Brenda Scolari, yes, that would be a step we would anticipate doing. We really do consider our grant program the heart of our work with tourism partners, and at the top of the list, a prioritized program. So yes, as our lodging tax revenue, starts to be healthier, and our cash reserve is restored, that would absolutely be a use we would immediately consider.
Thank you. And could you talk a little bit about the impacts or the anticipated impacts of the reduction of that program?
Well, I believe the only grants affected were the projects related to tourism grants. Angie, can you confirm that?
For the record, Angie Mattison, that is correct.
And that amount, which is only $200,000 for the biennium, is one of our, is really secondary to the marketing grant program, which is $1.65 million per year. And as I said, this smaller amount of money is meant for infrastructure projects. So not that that isn't important, but we certainly consider marketing the priority, in that we're helping our smaller destination marketing organizations and businesses within our territory structure with those awards.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I think the next up we have budget 1530, it's the Nevada Magazine budget. And we have a few questions on that budget. I believe Senator Dennis has questions on that budget.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to talk about, you briefly mentioned it in your intro, and we heard also in the pre-session stuff, but talk about how you're going to improve your long-term financial stability with the magazine.
I have our executive editor, Meg Mueller, on the call with me as well. But I can tell you that we've done a lot of work. We did have that workshop with Meredith Media, which is the largest publisher in the country. We did surveys of readers and advertisers to try to determine the best path forward to revise the business model to be more future focused. The readership has decreased in the past decade, and we know that we have to appeal to younger readers. So that means a change in, the editorial outline and the type of content produced. So that's step one. And in the past year, the magazine has reduced to become a quarterly publication. So it'll be saving those production costs. And really the big step and the one that, was difficult to do mid-pandemic was to reach out to other advertising sectors based on different types of content and the appeal to those businesses to advertise in the magazine. Very difficult to do in a recession and the middle of a pandemic when most businesses were struggling with their bottom line. So we're really hoping to make that big transition in the coming fiscal year, so that the magazine will not only be sustainable, but have these new areas of growth, both with distribution, their advertising base, and their readership. Meg, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. That's our goal this year, is definitely to increase subscribers, gain new advertisers, and just market our reach as best we can.
So that kind of goes to my next question. You've addressed that, but maybe you have some additional ideas on additional revenue streams for the magazine, in addition to what you've just mentioned. Do you have any additional things you guys are thinking about?
Our last item of our last production was our Ghost Town book, which proved phenomenally successful. So, working on that premise, we have a lot of niche areas that our readership loves, which are, trains, ghost towns, road trips, things like that. So those are all under consideration. We're still working on marketing that Ghost Town book to its fullest extent and selling out the copies of that we have. So again, everything sort of got put on hold for 2020, but right now it's all on the table. I actually have a meeting this morning with my staff to further look at some possibilities for new publications.
And that's an interesting concept, because you see that all the time, right? In magazines where they, like Time Magazine will have a special like collector's edition or something that can do that. So that's good that you're looking at those kind of things. What about potential expenditure reductions that I know you went from 6 to 4 magazines. Is there other savings that you guys have contemplated?
We're always looking for savings opportunities for sure. We're down to a staff of 5 right now, so we're about as lean and mean as we can get in that arena. We don't have any in-state travel really happening at this point, so we've cut back on every area where we had expenditures. We don't tend to run with a lot of expenses. We don't. I can't think of a single thing that we purchase annually, other than supplies. So I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I could tell you we're cutting back on, because we've already made all those cutbacks at this point.
Do you print the magazine in-house, or is that outsourced?
It is outsourced. We go through the budget process, and we have it outsourced.
And there's no opportunity there to save?
We did save. They were incredibly kind to work with us when we went from bi-monthly to quarterly. We changed our print size. We went from 80 pages to 96 pages. They gave us a heck of a discount on that. We are confined by the, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the agency that does our procurement for us, but the bid went out and they were chosen to do it. So they are the cheapest printer we had available to us.
Okay, well, thank you. And I appreciate the magazine. I love the quality and the articles. And so I think that it represents Nevada well. You guys are doing a good job. We can hopefully just figure out a way to help you keep going.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Assemblyman Levitt has a question as well.
Yeah, so I'm looking over the revenues dedicated towards the Nevada magazine, and I just wondered if the magazine had ever been self-sustainable, or if your business model leads towards that being self-sustainable, being a publication. You know, in an ideal world, you'd want the revenues that the magazine brings in to pay for the publication and above and beyond. So has it ever been that way, or has it always been subsidized by funding by public funding?
Brenda, do you want me to take this one?
Well, I can speak to it, which is that the magazine has been subsidized through legitimate pathways, which is Travel Nevada quite often needs the magazine to execute as our publishing arm. But certainly, because it's an enterprise fund, it is somewhat restricted from just blatant subsidy that isn't tied to a legitimate need. So it has been difficult. I think both of us are the first to admit that, and we're really trying to structure the magazine to be a healthy, self-sustaining business. We want it to have the cash reserves, not to have to be overly cautious or not grow editorially. We would love to reach the point where it can flourish and have the money to expand. As Meg mentioned, the Ghost Town book, some of the merchandise they sell, it's digital subscriptions. There are always more ideas, but the revenue to expand upon those and make those successful is just so limited right now that it's difficult. But I'm really not just hopeful, I'm confident that the magazine can make this transition and stay with us for decades to come, because I think all of us honor and cherish its legacy and want to see it grow and change to meet modern readership.
Thank you for that, Director Scolari. And please, can I remind anyone, the presenters to announce themselves and so that we can make sure that we have a record of who's speaking when you speak. And I believe Assemblywoman Gorlow has a comment.
Thank you, Chair Book. Yes, I just wanted to say that I truly enjoy the Nevada magazine. Thank you so much. I personally like the hard copy, having it, and I've saved a couple because it's been such a great educational piece of finding little places that I had no idea existed. And so my family and I, we have done some short trips and explored a little bit based on your magazine. And I think that that's part of the value of the magazine. You may not see the direct money coming in from people going to places, but I think small businesses and small towns, they actually do see some of that revenue and people going and exploring that they didn't even know anything about it. So thank you so much for all your hard work on the magazine. It's been a delight to read. Again, I like the hard copy, but I realize I'm not one of the younger readers, and so I'm not the ones that we're trying to market to, but thank you again for all that you're doing.
I would like to give you the opportunity to, I like Assemblywoman Gorlow and so many other Nevadans, use and appreciate all of the Travel Nevada content, and the Nevada magazine is just a wonderful piece for our state. I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell anyone watching, where can they find the Nevada magazine? Where can they find the Ghost Town publication? And also, what's the best way to access Travel Nevada's many offerings?
For the record, Brenda Scolari. Meg, I'll let you go first.
Okay, for the record, Meg Mueller, Nevada Magazine. The magazine is racked around the state, Walgreens, Barnes & Noble, grocery stores. We actually have a list of location retails on our website with a map that you can find where you can pick up the copy. The best way to get it, of course, is to subscribe, and it's much cheaper that way as well. The Ghost Town book, I believe, currently is for sale, probably just a handful of small museums, but it's predominantly available on our website that we can ship it out to you. That's the best place to get a hold of that. So that's where our products are.
And Ms. Mueller, what is that website?
NevadaMagazine.com.
Thank you. I want to give you the opportunity to promote your wonderful product every chance.
Thank you.
Well, I believe that is all the questions we have on this particular budget item, and which would move us to the next budget item, which is the 24, the Nevada Humanities budget. And I believe that we have Assemblywoman Peters has a few questions on this particular budget item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Nevada Humanities, what a cool hub for our art communities and our cultural communities to access funds to keep their programs going. And reviewing this budget makes my heart so sad, because so many of these entities that utilize the program are small, and really these grants make a huge difference to their ability to keep going in their communities. I know that the cut's not huge compared to what we have historically funded the program to. I have a couple of questions about the anticipated impacts of that reduction, that $25,000 reduction to the program. Can you just go into a little detail about what you guys think that impact will have on the grantees?
For the record, Director Scolari, we do have Christina Barr on the call, and she is the Director of Nevada Humanities, who will speak to that.
Good morning, everybody. For the record, I'm Christina Barr, the Executive Director of Nevada Humanities, and thank you so much for those kind words. I want to thank all of you for your support for Nevada Humanities and our work over the past 50 years. 2021 actually marks the 50th anniversary of Nevada Humanities and our service to the state. We'll of course, be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year when it's possible to gather in person. So we're going to do 50 more in 2022. But as most of you know, Nevada Humanities is Nevada's 501c3 nonprofit partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and operates under a congressional mandate to provide humanities-based educational services and cultural services to all Nevadans as Nevada's State Humanities Council. When our nation's arts and humanities councils were created by congressional mandate, all of the state arts councils were designated as state agencies. Hence, our sister organization, the Nevada Arts Council, is Nevada's state agency affiliate of the National Endowment for the Arts. And all of the state humanities councils were designated as 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Thus, we operate as an independent 501c3. I like to say this because I think a lot of people don't understand that we're actually congressionally mandated to operate in the state, which is one of the reasons that despite this operational difference, it was intended by Congress that both agencies operate with the support of the state. And the state of Nevada has supported Nevada Humanities in a variety of ways since its founding in 1971. And of course, we're now part of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Nevada Humanities, in our work, we provide direct grants to Nevada's nonprofit organizations to fund humanities-based public programs that encourage community engagement. And projects include a wide range of programs and events that explore local culture and Nevada's diverse heritage, our unique places. And we also promote civic engagement by Nevadans in their communities through our work. And our programmatic grants are significant across the state. As you mentioned, they're very small organizations. They're often local historical societies that are augmenting the work of our tourism organizations and also just our community health. And Nevada Humanities has also in 2020 had a significant role in distributing funds to aid in the recovery of our cultural infrastructure during the pandemic. In 2020, we distributed $360,000 in CARES Act funds to our cultural nonprofits last summer. We're actually poised to allocate almost twice that, approximately $7,000 in American Rescue funds to Nevada's nonprofit organizations and the cultural institutions to support COVID-19 recovery. That is, if Congress approves the stimulus bill currently being debated in Congress. So if that goes forward, we're going to have an incredible amount of work to do for that process. And as you know, the governor's budget has suggested a 20% cut to our funding, totaling a reduction of $25,000 for each year, leaving $100,000 for each year, rather than the $125,000 that was established during the last biennium. And I just want to point out that the past biennium was the first biennium of recovery since our funding was decimated and reduced from $100,000 in 2008 to $10,000 in the 2009 legislative session. It took us 10 years to regain our 2008 funding levels and an additional 2 years to move forward from our 2008 funding levels. So this loss is felt very deeply by our organization. A 20% cut to our general fund allocation for the upcoming biennium will have serious repercussions to Nevada Humanities operations and its ability to re-grant our state and federal funds to Nevada's nonprofits. These repercussions include a reduction in the amount of programmatic grant funding available to our nonprofits at a critical time of need. In fact, this year we were able to increase our grant making by 150%. We channeled everything we had to try to give what we could to our nonprofits. We see on the front lines how desperate they are. So we're working extremely hard to make sure they have some support to survive this pandemic. And I'm sure you guys are well aware of this as you're doing your work and investigating the condition of the state. But just know that we see this so deeply in our communities, in rural communities in particular. And this has just been hard for everyone to bear. We also, as I mentioned, need to be on deck if these American Rescue funds come through. We need a full complement of our staff in place and our ability to do everything we can for our state. These dollars are also leveraged by our grantees. We have a wonderful leverage rate. For every dollar we grant to an organization, they are able to raise an average of $10 locally. If we have to reduce this amount of funding, that private leverage will be lowered as well. And we want to keep this money churning in our communities. It's incredibly important, especially at this moment. And of course, we also do educational enhancements across the state. We produce the online Nevada Encyclopedia, which is used by K through 12 classrooms and beyond. Actually, everyone uses it. And at this moment, kids who are homeschooling, who are learning from home, this is our use of this resource has skyrocketed throughout the pandemic. And we're actually planning an upgrade for that encyclopedia to help accommodate teachers in particular who've requested more and more curricula to help them use the resource. It's a scholarly resource, it's non-commercial, it's entirely supported with federal and state funds. So it's really important that we're able to do this upgrade. And if we do not have these funds in place, we may not be able to do that upgrade. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing right now. And most significantly, the loss of these funds raises the potential that we may be not able to meet our one-to-one federal match requirement as Nevada State Humanities Council. We rely on these funds to be able to meet that match. We need to raise a certain amount of cash. It's one-to-one in cash and cost share. And if so for example, we brought in last year, 842,000, almost 843,000 in NEH federal funds into the state. If we do not have the ability to match that, it jeopardizes that funding. So I just wanted to raise that. And we're very aware that in a time of crisis, that this is a challenge for all of you, but just know that it's really critical. We also felt that the 20% cut felt excessive. And we would love, if you could consider that possibly the reduction of that or the elimination of that. We would be extremely grateful.
Thank you so much for that detailed discussion of Nevada Humanities. Can just real quick, do you have an estimate of how much we could potentially be losing from that federal national endowment because of these $25,000 cuts?
So we're required to match 1-to-1. And so if we can't do that, we jeopardize whatever we're unable to match, is my understanding of that. And I can get more detail about that to you, Assemblywoman Peters, definitely. But we struggle to make that match every year. And this year in particular, because of the nature of grant making and the nature of the cost share that we're able to leverage through our grantees was lower, because one of the problems was that for all the grants that we were able to give this year and last year, many of the programs didn't happen because of the nature of the shutdown. And so we had to push all of that forward in time. Some people had to return their money. Some people we actually didn't want the money back. We said, look, we know that this will be fixed. We just need time to see this through. So hang on to it and keep it moving forward. So eventually we may be able to garner some of that back. But at this moment in time, it is particularly jeopardizing that particular match component of the federal funds. So we really do rely on this. It's serious funding for us, even though it's a very small amount in the bigger picture of the state budget. I mean, it's so small. For us, it's very significant.
Thank you. And following up with those quantifications, if you can, that would be really helpful. And you can send that through staff so that we can all have access to that. And then I had a real quick follow-up on the operations of Nevada Humanities and your access to federal CARES dollars or PPP loans or other things that were able to keep you guys operating solvently or as whole as possible. Did you guys have access to those kinds of resources through the federal mechanism?
So we had access to the first round of PPP loans. So we were able to take out a small amount. Of course, we do a lot on very little, and we have a very small staff. So we were able to take out a PPP loan of $66,000 to help us sustain ourselves.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, and thank you, Ms. Barr. I think that everything that is in this budget, Travel Nevada and Nevada Magazine, but what you do as well is even more important as our state grows. Our state's getting so big, so many people are from somewhere else, or they're born right in the middle of a city and don't really get, I think, a thorough understanding of the culture of Nevada and the history of Nevada. And I think back to 8th grade down in Las Vegas, and I'm multi-generational Nevadan, and most of my family's from the rurals, but I was born in Las Vegas, and my Miss Miller at Hyde Park Middle School in the 8th grade teaching me, or 7th grade, teaching me Nevada history. And some of those lessons and things that I learned in that class that have kind of helped me throughout the rest of my life that so many folks in Nevada don't get right now. So it's really important that we continue to maintain the culture and history of Nevada and educate all of Nevadans and get them out of their towns and go look at what a wonderful and beautiful place this entire state is. So thank you for all that you do and try to help you in any way we can. I think that is it for this particular budget. I don't see any further questions. And thank you, Ms. Barr. I think that will move us to 2941, the museums and history budget. And on that budget, I know that Assemblywoman Miller had a question or two. I'm not sure if any other members do as well.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are regarding the license plate renewal fees, particularly from the 150th commemorative license plate. I know that it's very specific on what that revenue can be used for, specifically education and historical initiatives. But it seems that there was a fair amount of unspent renewal fees for those license plates. So I was wondering, how did you intend to utilize those fees, the unspent fees from the previous fiscal years? and if you have anything projected for the upcoming biennium.
Thank you. This is Myron Friedman. I'm the acting administrator for the Division of Museums and History. And yes, I appreciate that those funds have remained, and we are grateful that they are there. We do have plans to utilize them. They're really kind of spread across all of the state museums. The pandemic this past year really kind of stole our attention on many other areas. So we're looking forward to getting back on track with a lot of these initiatives. A lot of the funds we want to use to upgrade our Wi-Fi capabilities within the museums. Right now, we are challenged to provide the kinds of digital services inside the museums because of the lack of infrastructure and Wi-Fi. So that is a huge priority. We're also, we did use some of the funds to develop, that we put with other funds to develop the wonderful exhibit in the Capitol building on the state's history. And so we will continue to use those funds to update exhibits in most of the museums. 60,000, for example, will be utilized to once again get started on natural history exhibits in the State Museum in Carson City. The funds will also be utilized to go into some of these museums and look at some of the more popular artifacts and make tactile representations of them, which helps to improve access and learning capabilities for people who have disabilities. This also will be used to develop more in-depth audio tours throughout the museums. And then we need collection improvements in several of the museums that hold some of our vast archives and artifacts. And that's at the Nevada Historical Society and also at the Indian Hills facility in Carson City. We need stabilization, restoration of a historic structure in the Nevada State Railroad Museum. And also, we are looking at materials for off-site school programs. So if you're familiar with the Las Vegas Museum's Marvelous Traveling Trunks program, we want to enhance our ability to make materials available for schools to check out and take Nevada history into the schools. And then also we have big improvements coming up at the East Ely Railroad Depot. We have $61,000 earmarked from that fund to go into their new exhibitions that will update their exhibitions that are currently on the second floor of the depot, but also to utilize the first level to improve interpretation with a enhanced video on the story of the railroad, on Ely, and on the impact of railroading in that part of the state.
Thank you for that. I would follow up, Chair. I would like to, just to be very specific on it, on some of the costs that you addressed on what you anticipated spending it on. I know that it's prohibited to spend on any kind of general operation administrative functions. So, and that it should be pertaining specifically to educational or anything that preserves the historical, relevance and heritage. So are you concerned at all that maybe some of those costs that you anticipate could, maybe accidentally slip into the operational or administrative functions?
I don't. Myron Friedman, for the record, I don't anticipate that. We have a great need to use these funds for preserving the collections and for enhancing our educational capabilities, particularly through digital media, but also through enhancement to the exhibits.
And one final question: when do you have like a timeline for this, of when this spending will occur? Any kind of target or benchmark dates that you're looking at?
We looked at it in relation to the upcoming budget cycle here, and basically about 50% of it in the first fiscal year and 50% in the second fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Miller. I believe that is all the questions we had on these budgets and specifically on this one. And if Director Scolari, if you wanted to make any kind of final comments or kind of wrap it up, and thank you, Mr. Friedman, for what you do and also for presenting for us today and answering the question. Director Scolari, if you want to wrap it up for us.
For the record, Brenda Scolari, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have this dialogue this morning. I'd encourage everyone to visit our websites, travelnevada.com and nevadaculture.org. We also have our 2021 Visitors Guide being distributed the first week of March. So please also look for that. And we're happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a question from Assemblyman Levitt, but before I go to Assemblyman Levitt, where can we find that travel guide?
The travel guide will be available on travelnevada.com. You can sign up to have it sent to you. And we also have it distributed, it will be in the legislature, in the lobby. And we have distribution throughout the state as well.
Thank you. And Assemblyman Levitt?
Thank you, Chair Brooks. Sorry, I put my question in a little late. It just it popped in my head. So as far as the museums and history section, we have a railroad museum in Southern Nevada. It's in the greatest town in Nevada, or the greatest city in Nevada, in Boulder City. And it's from what I hear, it's one of the most frequented museums in the state. And so I wondered if there was any funding dedicated either now or in the future towards that museum. I know that they are looking to do some improvements, and especially in the historical and education realm.
Thank you, Myron Friedman, Acting Administrator for the Division of Museums and History, for the record. Thank you for the question. Absolutely, we have at the entrance to the greatest city in the state of Nevada, a wonderful railroad museum, and it is on a schedule for development. So this is not just any kind of development. This is a major imagination of a railroad experience that will bridge going from Las Vegas to Boulder with a train experience that takes people for miles in that region, and also with exhibits on historic railroading in that area, which gets into the fascinating story of how they the dam and sort of the railroad needs that were required for that. It's really a fascinating piece of Nevada history. In AB 84, the conservation bond that was passed, $30 million is promised to the museum system. 25 million of that is earmarked for that project. We have planning that's been done in terms of the renderings for how this site will look and how each area will be developed, and it's done in a series of phases. We have a wonderful active support group down there that's helping with this, as well as the City Council of Boulder, which is very involved in this, and I have an upcoming meeting with them to catch up on where we are with that. So the short answer is that our funding is really right now dependent on these conservation bonds, in addition to future fundraising we will do in collaboration with the city council and people in that area who are very involved in this project.
Thank you for that. And Chair Brooks, I know you like to promote stuff. So the website for that museum is nevadasouthern.com.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I think we should take every opportunity we can to promote all our wonderful museums and publications and programs that we have here in the state. So that is a ability, and I'm going to have to. We'll have to debate on if it's the best city in. I think I might live in that one, but it is a facility outside of a wonderful city. Yes, sir.
Chair, may I comment again?
Yes, sir. Please do.
Thank you, Myron Friedman. As part of that conservation bond, I also want to mention that 3.1 million of that will go to the second greatest city in the state of Nevada, which is Ely, for the development of the freight barn experience on the East Ely Railroad Depot Museum. And so we're very excited to get going on these projects, and we're looking forward to receiving funding through that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman, and thank you, Assemblyman. I do not see any further questions on any of these budgets or for the department. And so again, I would like to just thank Director Scolari and Mr. Friedman. Thank you. And I believe we are done with hearing of these budgets, and we can move on to our next agenda item, which today is public comment. And if broadcast services, if you could make sure that we have the public comment lines open and give folks a minute to call in or sign on if they have not already.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a couple callers in the queue. One moment, please.
And there's overwhelming there's support and desire from this committee to take some field trips on the weekends during this session as a result of some of the great work that you do and some of the information you've shared with us today. And so I think that will be in the planning phases here for the next couple of days or weeks.
For anyone that has just joined to supply public comment, please press *9 now to place yourself in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, and there are no callers for public comment at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, that would be it for this subcommittee meeting this morning, and we will be back tomorrow for, I believe, the joint full, if I'm not mistaken. And with that, we can adjourn. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.